Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast, available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Wednesday the 30th of October in London. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up today, Rachel Reeves gets set to hike taxes and spending and what's being billed as an era-defining UK budget. UBS results beat expectations as the Swiss bank warns of US election risks. Plus, politically charged, the EU risks retaliation as it imposes bigger tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Let's start with a roundup of our top stories. The UK's Chancellor Rachel Reeves will today pledge to rebuild Britain with her first budget. She will say, quote, "The only way to drive economic growth is to invest, invest, invest." Reeves is expected to set out about £35 billion in tax rises and spending cuts in her House of Commons address. Treasury Minister Darren Jones says despite the revenue-raising measures, it will be a pro-growth budget.
We're all clear that a pro-worker, pro-business approach to the economy is the right approach, and investing in your workforce is a great way to improve your productivity, not least because you'll have more people across the country with more money in their pocket being able to spend it in the economy.
The Chief Secretary of the Treasury, Darren Jones, speaking there. Bloomberg understands the budget will include a reshaping of fiscal rules to give the government space to borrow for more investment. Rachel Reeves is the first woman to deliver a budget as Chancellor in the 800-year history of the role. Her statement is expected to include more money for the NHS, with reports of a £3 billion funding boost for the armed forces. UBS has posted profits of $1.4 billion in the third quarter. That's nearly double what analysts had predicted. Both the lender's key wealth management unit and its investment bank outperformed. Switzerland's largest bank is currently working through the integration of its former rival Credit Suisse, which it took over in an emergency rescue last year. The New York Yankees still have a shot of winning the Major League Baseball World Series with a Game 4 victory in the best-of-7 series. After losing the first 3 games to the LA Dodgers, the Yankees secured an 11-4 win to avoid the embarrassment of a clean sweep. The victory was in large part thanks to the work of shortstop Anthony Volpe and his grand slam.
Base is loaded, 2 out. Cranks a ball, deep left field. Volpe with redemption!
The victory, broadcast on Fox Sports, came despite LA Dodgers' Freddie Freeman continuing to make baseball history, becoming the first player ever to hit a home run in each of the first 4 games of a World Series. Game 5 is set for Wednesday night New York time in the Bronx, with the Dodgers still needing just one more win to take the title. Standard Chartered has pledged to return at least $8 billion to investors by 2026. That's more than the $5 billion previously pledged and comes as the bank reported better than expected pre-tax profits of $1.81 billion for the third quarter. Standard Chartered was able to offset the impact of falling interest rates by a strong performance in its wealth management and global markets businesses. The lender also upgraded its 2024 operating guidance to grow near 10% from above 7%. The European Union has imposed higher tariffs on electric vehicles from China. The move, which will see levies peaking at 45%, is ratcheting up trade tensions between the world's leading export powers. After months of negotiations, the regulation was published in the EU's official journal yesterday amid threats of Chinese retaliation and industry pleas to avoid escalation. It's a big setback for Chinese producers already effectively shut out of the US, which quadrupled its duty to more than 100% this year. Alphabet has reported healthy gains in both revenue and profit as the company's big bet on AI shows signs of paying off. Revenue, excluding partner payouts, increased to $74.6 billion. That's up around 16% year on year and ahead of average analysts' expectations. CEO Sundar Pichai says the numbers are encouraging.
I'm very pleased with our growth. This business has real momentum and the overall opportunity is increasing as customers embrace Gen AI. We generated Q3 revenues of $11.4 billion, up 35% over last year, with operating margins of 17%.
Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai there speaking as the company reported a rise in net income to $2.12 per share. Shares rose by more than 5% in after-hours trading following the results. A Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris says a second Donald Trump presidency would be steeped in chaos and division. She chose to make her closing pitch to voters on the same spot where Republican nominee Trump had rallied supporters on the 6th of January 2022 ahead of the attack on the Capitol. Speaking to an estimated crowd of more than 70,000, Harris called Donald Trump a petty tyrant and wannabe dictator.
America, we know what Donald Trump has in mind. More chaos, more division, and policies that help those at the very top and hurt everyone else. I offer a different path, and I ask for your vote.
Harris's speech came as former President Donald Trump sought to move past controversy over racist remarks made by a comedian at his Madison Square Garden rally on Sunday. Speaking at an event at his Mar-a-Lago home, Trump vowed to seize the assets of drug cartels and gangs to provide compensation to victims. Those are our top stories this morning on the markets, and we saw on Wall Street the Nasdaq closing at an all-time high after the moves we've seen too in after-hours shares for Alphabet and for AMD, the chip maker sinking 7% after hours after its results. Bitcoin rose by nearly 4% yesterday, a whisker away from all-time highs. US Treasury yields ended lower, down 3 basis points to 4.25%. Gold climbing to a fresh record, closing over 1% higher yesterday and rising another 0.3 today. In Asia, the Nikkei in Tokyo up by 1%, the Hang Seng down by 1.8%. In a moment, we will bring you more details on those results from UBS, plus what to watch in today's budget in the UK. But another story that caught my eye today to do with the potential future of online dating. Our opinion columnist Dave Lee has been writing about comments from the founder of Bumble earlier this year that one day AI concierges might date for us. Dave admits he found this remark controversial at the time, as I think many of us would. But on reflection, he does see some application for the technology to take the monotony out of matches based on what he describes as a mostly dumb algorithm. This is being put in place by Hinge, among others, to try and use AI to improve people's dating profiles. Not getting quite involved in the process, but encouraging people to perhaps respond to their answers to try to make them, I suppose, more likely to result in actual dates. So interesting to see how that technology rolls out and how users respond to it. A helpful hand, perhaps, that better understands your preferences. Will AI start getting thanked in wedding speeches? We shall see. Well, Rachel Reeves will today become the first woman to ever deliver a UK budget in the 800 years that the role of the Chancellor of the Exchequer has existed. But it's not the only potentially historic thing about this budget. For more now and for what's at stake for both the new Labour government and the country more broadly, we turn to our UK correspondent Lizzie Burton ahead of the Chancellor's statement at 12:30 today.
Well, Stephen, this is politically huge. It's the first Labour budget in 14 years. It's going to define UK politics for the rest of the decade. And Rachel Reeves herself has pointed to the historical significance of this. She's compared it to previous famous Labour budgets in 1945 when they, as she put it, rebuilt after the war, in 1964 when they rebuilt with the white heat of technology, and in 1997 when she says they rebuilt public services. She says they need to do all of that now. So this is the chance to really set out spending plans that will make people feel better off by the next election, the change they need to deliver to pay voters back for lending Labour their votes and getting them into office. They also need to balance the books so that trust is restored in Labour's economic credibility. And that brings me on to why this is significant for markets. Because remember, it was only 2 years ago that Liz Truss had that mini budget. So there is this big question of whether markets will accept one of the UK's biggest borrowing plans on record, we expect. Finally, it's also huge for business because, as you know, Stephen, the Labour Party has been courting the business community with this smoked salmon and scrambled eggs offensive. It looks like actually business could get whacked with tax hikes. So can they keep business on side after today?
And of course, there's been so much reporting in advance of today. Remind us of some of the key changes that we are expecting Rachel Reeves to announce.
Well, let me frame it this way. Ever since they got into office, Labour have emphasised this £22 billion black hole in the public finances that they inherited from the Conservatives. So today, the budget's expected to include £40 billion of revenue-raising measures to make sure that they close that gap and then some, because the golden rule for Rachel Reeves is that day-to-day spending is covered by tax, and she also wants a buffer on top of that. So what could these tax hikes include? Well, national insurance contributions for employers could be something. Interestingly, it's not employees, because they told us working people wouldn't have their taxes raised.
Yes, famously a promise that's come back to haunt them in some ways.
Indeed, and they've been struggling to define what a working person is. We're also looking at potential tax rises for capital gains and inheritance. And this is also controversial because Labour said before the election it had no plans to raise taxes beyond a limited few in the manifesto. So really, Rachel Reeves is going to have to frame this as a budget for growth, which of course is Labour's top priority. In addition, we're looking at her potentially changing the fiscal rules to borrow for investment. This is something that she confirmed in Washington at the IMF meeting, so that she can let the UK borrow as much as £70 billion over the next 5 years. And as I say, there's been so much pitch rolling, expectations management, precisely to avoid a Liz Truss moment. However, we already saw gilts get hammered last week because of the changes to the fiscal rules that we're expecting. It'll be interesting to see whether there's even more market reaction today. But the point of the tax rises is to increase spending, particularly on the NHS and childcare, so that they can grow the economy and provide better public services in general.
Now, one of the features of budgets of recent years has been the surprise. I'm talking about Liz Truss, but some other chancellors who have trailed some things in advance they're going to do, and at the last minute they pull a rabbit out of a hat. If you were looking for surprises, where would you be looking today?
I think a better comparison than the mini budget would be the Bank of England independence. That's the sort of move, the scale of move that would show that this really is a change in government. But I don't expect that big of a move from Rachel Reeves, because this is a woman who really wants to show that Labour is delivering stability, hence all the pitch rolling. What she has emphasised as Britain's first female chancellor is her ambitions to make the economy work for women. She's emphasised that she's passionate about education. She says that Tony Blair's focus on education is what inspired her to get into politics. So this is why, at the heart of that Venn diagram, I expect something on childcare. And this is something that Bloomberg reported last month, that £1.8 billion will be pumped into expanding childcare services, including increasing the number of nurseries. And that has multiple benefits, whether it's closing the gender pay gap, whether it's reducing economic inactivity, which is at the moment contributing to wage pressures and inflation, whether it's growing productivity and economic growth in general. So it has multiple benefits. But remember, the Tories already did a childcare package. So they really, if they're going to go for it, need to put serious money into it to make a real difference.
Thanks to our UK correspondent Lizzie Burdnell. Full live analysis of the budget here on Bloomberg Radio. Our coverage starts at 12 London time. Let's bring you more now on the third quarter earnings from UBS, which broadly beat expectations. The Swiss bank's net income of $1.4 billion for the quarter was almost double what analysts had predicted. Our Switzerland Bureau Chief Alessandro Speciale joins us now for more. Alessandro, great to have you on. Where did the strength in these UBS earnings come from?
It was pretty much across the board. The investment bank beat expectations. The key wealth management unit posted better than expected profit, and which is also important, net new assets. New assets are keeping coming in for UBS, 25 billion, slightly less than the previous quarter, but they are on target to reach their target of 100 billion net new assets by the end of the year. Overall, UBS has been showing that it can deliver solid progress as it integrates Credit Suisse, its old business, the giant bank that it's bought the end of last year when it was about to collapse, and at the same time it's also managing uncertainty because Switzerland is reviewing its capital requirements. It might impose higher capital requirements early next year, and So UBS has said that it aims to keep CET1 ratio at about 14%, more or less stable, even as it has started giving back a buyback program of about 1 billion, and this is on track. So overall, solid results. Integration continues, and it's preparing for the next stage, which is when the two banks will actually be merged. Clients are being slowly migrated from old Credit Suisse systems to UBS, and this will be the main task for 2025 for the bank.
Some concerns, though, in the commentary from the lender about some upcoming risks, including the US election.
Yes, absolutely. So it's been overall a solid quarter for banks overall with higher rates, but of course rates are falling, and of course there is a lot of volatility, there is a lot of uncertainty politically, and of course the main risk event here is the US elections. UBS has also warned that costs will see a bit of a seasonal uptick in the next quarter, so it has been a strong quarter, but don't expect growth to continue at this pace in the next quarter, the bank has been warning.
Okay, and we did also hear some comments from the UBS chairman, Colm Kelleher, about some of their more future ambitions focused on wealth management.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, UBS is the world's largest wealth manager, but the point of weakness, if you want, the point where it needs to grow is the US. It is less strong than its US peers there. It has this model of independent wealth advisors, which are not 100% linked to the bank. They sell its products, but they are not working for the bank. It needs to expand. One way to do that, and Kelleher had already been clear in doing this, and it's been more explicit yesterday, is that it might need to buy some other banks, some other wealth manager in the US to accelerate this expansion and to get a stronger foothold, and especially also to integrate, to make sure that the people who work for UBS sell the whole gamut of banking products, which would of course help integration and help also client retention.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.